President Trump announced yesterday that the U.S. would be pulling out of a scheduled meeting with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un in Singapore. The meeting had initially been touted as a possible landmark foreign policy event to denuclearize North Korea and neutralize the threat to the free world. But doubts about the meeting arose in recent weeks. As a result, President Trump was adamant about the U.S. making the decision to pull out of the talks and not the North Koreans. Just like the Stanley Cup-bound Washington Capitals, the president knows how to take advantage of a D.C. power play. And if that means pulling the plug on the talks first, so be it. Take a look at what President Trump had to say.
I'd like to begin by saying that based on the recent statement of North Korea, I have decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. While many things can happen and a great opportunity lies ahead potentially, I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world. North Korea has the opportunity to end decades of poverty and oppression by following the path of denuclearization and joining the community of nations. And I hope that Kim Jong-un will ultimately do what is right, not only for himself, but perhaps most importantly, what's right for his people, who are suffering greatly and needlessly. All of the Korean people, North and South, deserve to be able to live together in harmony, prosperity, and peace. That bright and beautiful future can only happen when the threat of nuclear weapons is removed. No way it can happen otherwise. If and when Kim Jong-un chooses to engage in constructive dialogue and actions, I am waiting.
Well, we don't have to wait for Frank Gaffney to be here. Joining me now, the president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, thanks so much for being on the show.
Happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
You better believe it. Frank, the president says, and he mentioned this morning online, that the communication lines are back open. This has to be a good sign after this announcement.
Well, I think so. And I think the president deserves great credit for it being so. The North Koreans, of course, have been accustomed to being rewarded for their bad behavior in the past. And what was such a stark break from all of that was the president saying, in the face of the attacks on the vice president and the national security advisor, and threats of, nuclear war, sort of the kind of pre-charm offensive behavior that the North Koreans are well known for. He wasn't going to have that bad behavior. It certainly wasn't going to be possible for him to arrange for a meeting in the face of it. So when he pulled the plug, it turned out to be a very short time indeed before Kim Jong-un decided, well, wait a minute, let me get back to that charm offensive. Let's see if we can't sit down and talk after all. So my guess is that there will be some kind of summit. I think the president's absolutely right to make it clear that if it doesn't actually translate to real progress in the direction of the disarmament, the denuclearization, as it's called, of North Korea, it's not worth going to, and it's certainly not worth staying at if it turns out to be other than productive.
Well, Frank, you made a good point, and this is something that I think a lot of us realize watching this relationship go back and forth. You really can't trust a lot of what Kim Jong-un has to say, so the president kind of calling him out and going, I'm going to be the one to make the first move here. The ball is now in my court. That's what a lot of people were hoping he would do. Yeah, sure, I guess it's going to be delayed for a little while, but that's much better than having Kim Jong-un say it's off, right?
Well, I think, again, this isn't just about who one up the other. This is about setting both expectations and the terms of this kind of conversation. There is another factor, of course, which we shouldn't ignore in all of this, and that is the role that China is playing. Not a party directly to these conversations or likely to be present at them, but very much, I think, calling the shots behind the scenes. And the reason that's so important is, we've been fed a line for a long time that China is on our side and is a helpmate, and that we'll be able to rely on them to cause the North Koreans to behave better and parley and so on. I don't think so. And I think the president was absolutely right to call the Chinese out for quite possibly having ordered Kim Jong un to move away from that so-called charm offensive towards a more bellicose routine. And it will be very interesting to me to see whether the Chinese continue to play that game. I think they think it's in their interest to have these tensions between the United States and North Korea, to have North Korea be a nuclear armed state threatening us and others in the region, because among other things, as you know, it distracts us from what the Chinese themselves are doing to pose real threats to our country and to our vital interests in the Pacific and beyond.
Frank, moving forward, let's say the president not only sorts everything out with China, he gets the North Koreans to the table, denuclearization happens, the Nobel Peace Prize has to come back on the table, does it not?
Well, I'm not as big a fan of the Nobel Peace Prize as some. I have to say, after the coin of that realm, if I can use that expression, was greatly reduced when they gave it to Barack Obama just for showing up as president of the United States. But look, there are a lot of ifs there. I have to tell you, I'm very skeptical that much good can come of these negotiations for all the reasons that we've been discussing. The nature of the North Korean regime, the horrific character, specifically with its own people. I very much believe that any government that treats its own people badly is unlikely to be a very reliable friend to ours. Mm-hmm. And then there's China. But for all these reasons, I think it's not a high probability. But look, if the president actually is able to accomplish the verifiable and enduring denuclearization of one of the most dangerous regimes on the planet, he deserves not just the Nobel Peace Prize, statehood, I think, is probably in order.
Well, if memory serves me, the last president to even remotely get this closer to bring it up in this serious was he who must not be named, right? President Clinton back in 2000. How much of a big deal could this play into the midterms coming up? Can this finally be perhaps a talking point for the Republicans to actually get people to rally behind? Because it seems to me it is the most pressing issue on the table now.
Well, I'd like to think that national security is the most pressing issue for a lot of people. That's not generally been my experience, to be honest with you. I think most of us take it for granted that we're secure, that we're the world's only superpower, that nobody is going to mess with us, and so on. That's simply not true, as you know, and your network does a terrific job of explaining this to people. But having said all that, I think that if there is real progress made on this front before the November elections, surely it will redound to the benefit of the president and the sense of well-being of a lot of voters. And that happens to be particularly helpful because it will jive with their feeling that economically they're doing better and the country is moving in the right direction, which I think the polls are currently indicating. So we'll see. I'm not going to hold out a whole lot of hope again that this is going to be a big swinger one way or the other. Of course, if we're in the middle of a nuclear war, that will almost certainly be concentrating people's minds. I would hope, again, God forbid, but I would hope, again, would bring to the forefront the importance of having, as we do, a president who believes and is intent on practicing, as he did in this case, what he calls, and my old boss Ronald Reagan used to describe as peace through strength.
Well, Frank, you, as always, bring to the forefront a lot of important points. Although we are out of time now, we appreciate you coming in and look forward to hearing back from you soon.